911.
Help me, my brother's dead.
What's your name?
Mickey.
What do you mean by your brother's dead?
He killed himself.
How did he do it?
Again.
Bullshit. They say I really sound like a rapper now. Hey. I don't wanna go to jail, so I gotta call a hit. If that nigga try to bail, we gon' have to get him hit. It don't matter why he tell, any reason he a snitch. That's what it is, no way around it. When we see you, this is it. Bitch, I don't wanna run. Do you see these all whites? Niggas tax like off-white, give them frostbite. Y'all can play with them Tide Pods. We got tall pipes, 3 legs like a tripod. Give her long pipe, flipping bands like paranormal. Acting nigga all night. Niggas shed like snakes. Skin, but the cost like cheap talk. Niggas all bought, ain't got no bite, no heart. He won't go far with the boss sight. Hey, try court, you won't make it to the court, nigga. You piss poor, plus your diamonds made of quartz, nigga. You a corpse off them Xannies, you enforce, nigga. You a dork, all that gangsta shit endorsed, nigga. Hold up, for them hop outdoors, they finna load up. Desi blow a hole through that nigga like a donut. Way the ops be skirting all side like they hitting donuts. Your whip ain't never get fixed, keep fucking with the grown up. Bitch, this Lamborghini, yeah, I finna pull up on my oldest bitch. Ring a doorbell, then rev the whip, just try to show some shit. Look at my reflection, look at her, my necklace, blow a kiss. Step back out, hit a fist, and speed off quick like I don't know the bitch. Hey, fuck you, I don't know you shit. Niggas on disloyal shit. We gon' wrap him up and take him home. 10 coil shit. We gon' peel his cap to the bone. Turmoil shit. We gon' crack his egg till it's gone. Hard boiled shit.
Come on.
ThugCrowd Radio. Please listen to this important disclaimer in its entirety. All participants of this ThugCrowd Radio episode are characters. None of the stories told during these episodes are based on facts, truth, or reality. All works of fiction displayed during this episode that resemble real-life situations are coincidental and are not meant to serve as guides or tutorials to commit any crimes in any country. Please consult an attorney for local laws and regulations. And as always, trust your inner criminal.
Hold on, here we go. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I just screwed up everything, so apologize. But we're on. Hi, hello.
Yes, hello.
Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Hello.
Or afternoon.
Hey.
Hello to everybody. Hi everybody. Welcome to ThugCrowd, episode 39. Got a lot of stuff today. Got a lot of cool ideas, interesting talks, things. So I guess we'll get right into it. How's everybody doing today?
pretty great. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm not tired, but
It's getting dark so early. Like,
yeah.
yes.
It's easier to see a flame burning bright in the darkness. We need more of that.
What's that? A stream 3 times a week? Is that what I just heard?
No.
Oh, you're gonna host it?
Yeah, it's all yours.
Organize it.
Hey, I'll go to my Discord and leave the channel open. Anybody comes in and we'll start streaming.
Just leave your API keys somewhere we can find them.
You're not supposed to leave those on GitHub.
But yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. We have an awesome show today. We have an amazing guest, TProphet, who is somebody that I grew up reading, like his column and seeing his talks and things like that. So I'm excited to have him on here to talk about phone phreaking and show us how it's actually done. Because if you guys were here 2 weeks ago, you heard our really sad excuse for trying to blue box the KKK hotline.
I tried.
We tried. We almost got it, but yeah.
Did
Good stuff.
anybody,
unless we're not making mistakes, so it's okay.
Yeah. Did
No, I'm
anybody
just excited to have
actually,
somebody who knows what they're talking about here.
yeah, no doubt. Did anybody actually try it out on their own and get it working?
I did not actually. I have before. I have used Project MF before, but I didn't recently.
Yeah, I haven't had time either. It's super fun. It honestly is really, really cool. And if people are listening that are newer to it, that aren't really sure where to start, Project MF has a website that you can kind of learn about what it's about and get into it.
Hey, is this thing on?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
What's up?
Cool. I figured out how to use Discord.
Discord is hotness at the moment. Yeah, you
That'd be
sound.
So yeah. So let's get into our news here. I just posted the show notes so y'all can read it. But is DNZ here?
I don't see him. No.
Because I wanted to talk to him. I know you're here, Faith, but I wanted to also talk with DNZ about the Australian encryption bill and what it means for Australians. But we should leave that probably for later,
Okay.
whenever he comes on, just because.
I mean, it's really not. There's no story there, right? It's like a non-issue. Nothing's the problem. Like everything's.
Yeah, we can totally glaze over it and skip it and not talk about it. It's not important. No, absolutely fucking not.
We can hear you.
You got me? Yeah, you got
Hey!
me.
There we go. We need the Australian accent for it to be authentic.
Well, hold on. Let me pull up my folders and give me a minute.
Skip it first because I don't know. I don't want to.
We'll come back
I
to
don't
it.
want to go.
Come back to it.
Yeah. I want to have a drink ready before I start a rant, but I don't want to rant.
Alrighty. So another Australian news, you can use was it Marmite or Vegemite to power a circuit as the traces on toast.
Yeah, some guy made a tiny little pipe, like a little piper, so you could like pipe out a little circuit on toast. I don't know what the practicality of this is. And breadboard.
I mean, it's a perfect breadboard. It's a literal breadboard. Yes.
It likely has extremely high systems across those the longer they get. But that's exactly why they use LEDs, because they don't give a shit as long as voltage gets across them. You're going to turn them on. So, you're not going to be driving much in terms of data, etc. Child screaming. Yeah, cool shit.
That's cool. So the secret behind it is it's powering LEDs, which aren't discriminatory about a lot of the specifics.
Interesting. It's not like a potato where they're actually powering low-end computers like lattice or light bulbs, but they're just using it as a.
You're saying they don't have the sophistication of a potato.
A lot of the electronic ink that you can paint with, same properties, although that's probably a lot better, but it still has a lot of resistance across the distance. So the longer those traces get, the less usable they become for pretty much anything but stuff like LEDs.
Yeah.
But hey, Marmite now has a purpose.
Yeah. Does anybody
That's
do we
true.
know what the ingredient is that makes it conductive?
I believe it's the sodium.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's fairly high in like it's obviously quite salty, but
I've
yeah,
never had it.
it's basically like salty yeast, and if you didn't grow up eating it, you'd
Favorite
really
flavor.
like.
So it's a very British colony thing, is what you're trying to say. Us Yanks would probably
Well,
not appreciate.
Marmite, there's Marmite, Promite, and Vegemite. They're all. And there's a couple other yeast-based
Chromite?
products. Yeah.
Can you give us
And,
the breakdown between all of them? Like,
That sounds like something that's an explosive. It sounds like.
yeah,
Like 200 tons of
like
chromite.
So, I mean, it's powering LEDs.
Thermite or Semtex. Yeah, like basically like Marmite and Promite are just grosser versions of Vegemite. Marmite's more ink, and yeah, I mean, this is like a salty, thick spread, I guess. But if you don't like it, then you're never gonna like it. Don't just yeah. I mean, it's not a big.
You can tell he's a real Australian.
Yeah, it's basically just kind of like it's a lot of kids grew up eating it. Like, so when you grow up eating it, like you don't think about it too much.
Yeah,
And then once other people, you know, you're like, hey, you want Vegemite toast? And they're like, no, that's fucking disgusting. And you're like, what?
Oh, well, another thing that's fucking disgusting is Kubernetes being hijacked worldwide. What is
So that beats every Star Wars transition I've ever seen right there.
So I'm actually we expected this. It's just in the news. If you use Kubernetes, if you are a DevOps person, if you care about your production systems, upgrade Kubernetes because there's multiple POCs out. And actually, if you look in our show notes in our cheat code section, there is the Kubernetes. There's a Kubernetes POC in there for you guys to take a look at. So yeah, it's out there. It's obviously something that people would try to leverage, but because of DevOps and we want to move fast, but not everybody knows how to. So read a book, talk to Ian Coldwater, and please upgrade.
can I just point out how much cryptocurrency has made hacking just generally horrible? I saw this happen, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, story. And somebody took advantage of this, and it's just to mine shitty shitcoins, right? It was so depressing. It's like do something better.
Well,
yeah.
On the other side of that coin as well is that crypto startups and smaller places by nature are into new technologies. So why wouldn't they containerize everything? So wink wink nudge nudge.
This is true.
Wait, are we setting up a botnet? I didn't catch that.
No, like I'm just saying that like a lot of the platforms that are hosting like the new technology, like so cryptocurrency services being a newer technology, there's a correlation between the people who are working on cryptocurrency stuff and wanting to be able to deploy it quickly and at scale. And if you're providing a service, say a gambling service, or maybe a some sort of currency watch or something that requires like computation across multiple nodes, and then just by nature of being the newer technology, those people also want to work with other newer technologies. So if you were to go and have a look at some systems, I'm sure you'd find that they were non-surprisingly hosted on Kubernetes stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The next story that we have in here is interesting. It's the U.S. is readying charges against Chinese hackers. And I'm actually going to post a different link in here because I'm blocked from reading that Wall Street Journal thing, and even I just don't feel like
paywall
here. And Voices Voice, I just posted it. But yeah, this is about the U.S. is seeking to charge the Chinese hackers who have been hacking MSPs that are related to the Department of Homeland Security and other like defense stuff. So this is pretty interesting.
They're going after MSPs.
Yeah, so these people they've been able to have spent years trying to hack into certain ones. I'm not sure exactly the details about all of them, but they have been attempting to do certain things.
We're talking about like SecureWorks and places like that, right?
Yeah, like anything that's like providing a third-party service to like the DoD, stuff like that are Homeland Security and shit like that have been targeted by hackers. Like big surprise, but
yeah,
they're actually seeking to charge them for these crimes, though.
So I think Daniel Gallagher had a question up about that, and I kind of wondered what inspired that question. Obviously, this is what inspired it, but yeah, that's super dangerous, right? Because you have access to an oracle that is controlling the security of organizations, not limited to even like power companies. There's absolutely a majority of power companies actually have MSPs, and it's yeah. I kind of wonder what'll be revealed, because depending on the level of access and all that, there's serious damage and infiltration that could be done and could still be going on. And I've seen some MSPs that I won't name specifically, kind of how they work internally and how they build their stuff. And it is not, it's just like any other startup. It's not pretty. It's there to serve a purpose and not with security in mind, ironically.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have like cheap interns and people who are just coming on to be, do system administration work or whatever. But that, they don't really like. It's hard to put into, I guess, put into someone's head if they don't already understand it, how important that kind of job actually is to be a sysadmin for something like that.
Yeah, well, and it also comes down to pay, right? Like usually those are kind of lower paying jobs because they're entry level ish, and
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the gravity of what they actually are holding the keys to. Crazy stuff.
No, and I think you bring up a really good point. Sorry if I sound different. I'm pretty sick, but yeah, a lot of people I've noticed with MSPs and other partner programs, you don't always understand exactly what you're doing. You're just, oh, this is X client, and you know the name, you see the name, you can Google the name, but you don't understand what potentially data is actually at risk for these clients or these particular partners or individuals.
Yeah, man, definitely.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting to look at, and I think that people should, I don't know, just be aware of this kind of stuff. And if you are working in even if you think your job does not mean much, definitely take it seriously, because people are trying to do this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah. So just as a
specific, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
I was gonna say like a friend of mine started working as a sysadmin at a very unimportant contractor years ago, and when he went in there, they were using Soho firewall and some other stuff. And this guy's not a security guy; he's just he's just a sysadmin type. But they do defense related stuff. It's not very exciting, but instantly the first thing he said is like, okay, well, anything you have is now belongs to China. And they were like, well, why? Like, why would you say that? He's like, well, you have a defense contract. That's pretty much it. Like, if you have if that's what you do in any capacity, you're probably a target. So, lol.
Yeah.
The other thing that's just something I want to mention specifically with SecureWorks, I recall, not saying anything others was owned. I don't know, but I do know one of the products that they offered was a box that you install in a privileged area of your network that quite literally ran TCP dump. And that, like, to think of nation state actors having that kind of access and control is something that should be on everybody's mind that is security minded, because that's freaking that's just crazy.
Wasn't it the SecureWorks analyst who ran some payload that he was trying to look into and infected a bunch of Marriott?
Yep.
Neat.
Yep.
Well, on the subject of China, I actually lived and worked over there for 3 years and ran a pretty big IT shop for a company you've heard of. And, it's not unusual for the Chinese government to show up and say, we want this box on your network. And you ask what's in the box, and they won't tell you. And when does it need to be on the network? Like in this specific place right now, basically. And, you don't have any leverage. There's nothing you can do. That's fortunately never happened to me, but it did happen to a Fortune 1 company where I knew the IT manager.
A Fortune 1 company, okay.
That's the box signature edition.
I mean, they're trying that stuff in Australia right now, right? They're trying to put these mystery boxes on our 5G network. They're not going to tell us how they work. They're not going to let us look inside them. So,
well, Australia is even worse, man. Like, they just passed that crazy law that deputizes every Australian developer to insert malware into software they're working on behalf of the Australian government. The only logical response for any company that isn't Australian is to immediately fire all Australians.
Yeah, I think. TNZ, have you had a chance to have a few drinks? Are you okay to talk about it? Because it sounds like something we should talk about.
Yeah, but let's just can we quickly just go? These next two topics are also China related. Let's stick to the China thing.
Next one, arrests Huawei's global chief financial officer in Vancouver. So this one is interesting too. There's not really much information about it. It's just about some violating sanctions relating to Iran and some other sanctions and stuff. But there's not really a lot of info about it. Does anybody know anything more about this story? Because this is
so basically, this one is the TLDR is that that there's sanctions on sending certain hardware over to Iran. So what they did was they knowingly created subsidiary companies and basically just sort of like side channeled products through to that country. So they specifically did some shady to bypass sanctions, which is what this is really about.
Well, HSBC are implicated as well, but none of their executives have been arrested yet. So it seems politically.
It's definitely I think it's a bit of the case where Huawei are very controversial right now. The fact that we've talked about the 5G Australian rollout has them banned. The 5G New Zealand rollout has them banned, like as in infrastructure, not as in handsets. So, and the British Telecom are also pulling them out, which came from some big dick at MI6 was for British Telecom. So they're pretty controversial right now, and I think that's a lot to do with the arrest is around that as well. So HSBC don't have that controversy around them, so that's probably why they're not copping as much flack, I suppose.
Forget who
Did you see the Apple came out?
No.
Did you see that Apple got banned from selling iPhones in China?
Yeah, it's
today
from a Qualcomm lawsuit, and it doesn't affect the newer model phones, but yeah, it's a pretty big deal, and it's
it's again, that's just it's just brinksmanship, political game playing because of the trade war that's going on.
For those who haven't heard, though, what happened?
No, they're literally just it was the result of a lawsuit. So there was some kind of IP lawsuit, I believe it was done for IP, intellectual property, and it was between Qualcomm and I'm assuming Apple. I actually don't know much about it. All I know is that it was the result of a case involving Qualcomm and the phones that
It's a
had chip.
temporary injunction, and it's pretty rare that these ever get granted by anybody on the planet, let alone in China, where they don't really respect copyright that hard.
China totally respects intellectual property when it suits the aims of the Chinese government. Yeah. One other really important point here is that patents in China are not global patents. So if you have a global patent, it's basically global anywhere except for China. And so Qualcomm got patents on Apple technology, that they claim is theirs. And they've now sued Apple in Chinese court to prevent Apple from selling devices in China. And it just so happens that the Chinese government wants a way to block Apple from China. So this is a really convenient way to do it. That's kind of how China plays.
Yeah, I think China isn't impressed with the level of cooperation that they might be requesting and not getting from.
Yeah, there's a lot of other trade war crap going back and forth at the moment, like soybeans, pork, all this crap is affected. But Huawei is like the tip of the media spear.
Yeah, God knows
and
what's
it's like a coordinated attack from the Five Eyes nation. If you look in the media of any Five Eyes nation right now, there's front page Huawei update.
Yeah, I think if you have a look at the kind of things that China own in Australia, like parent companies with infrastructure, and in return we buy a bunch of stuff from them, like steel and other things that run the building industry. You know, there's like a lot of different complexities that have been set up with Australian trade agreements with China. So it's pretty crazy. But I think some of that power wants to be relinquished by both sides for different reasons, but not really. But everyone's just sort of dancing.
Trump came out today and said that he'll get involved in releasing this lady from detention in Canada or wherever, if necessary. But up until today, he basically just denied even having ever heard of Huawei. He's like, I don't know what any of that stuff is.
I mean, I actually sort of believe that he has no idea who they
are.
Hell
yeah, maybe.
Trump thing.
Yeah. But speaking of China again, Supermicro sent out a letter to its customers saying that it has found no evidence of malicious chips on its motherboards. And they asked third-party companies to audit their hardware. So, yeah, apparently I didn't even know Bloomberg has not said anything about that one story that they did. There's not a redaction, nor a correction, nor a follow-up. There's just been one story that just went out about this, and it made Supermicro shares just drop 41% right after the report was published. That's it.
Yeah.
Illuminati.
Something I find
I see it as part of the trade war. I see it all as part of the same thing.
Something I find interesting is that Supermicro hasn't taken any civil action against Bloomberg, and maybe it's just because they're not allowed to, but I would think almost in this case that some kind of action would be taken, and it could be because there's partial truths in the article.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I'm actually I'm quite confident.
Civil action would be admitting to something that perhaps they don't.
Say that again?
He said that admitting to something would then reveal something else. So yeah, so he just accidentally screws up over saying, well, we don't have any of those kind of backdoors, but
I think one of the if you look at the NSA toolkit, where they were intercepting Cisco routers and stuff through the postal service, and installing implants. So maybe it's not like the single capacitor looking chip bullshit that they have, but maybe there's probably something in the catalog for off-the-shelf Supermicro hardware. Who knows?
Probably.
Spawn from you don't really know what until it comes out. So
there was an article that the Register did, I believe, that had a pretty good breakdown of what's real and what's not real to a provable point. And one of the things that they brought up were Ethernet adapter implants. And I think those have generally been proven. I could be wrong, but there was a really good article that Register did that seemed to be calling out what's right and what's not.
So the Supermicro Ethernet adapter firmware in particular was brought up, where it was being shipped with a vulnerable version, which could just be, you know, that's not, could, maybe it's not intentional, right?
No, I think they were
And
actually
where it was going to, like the Google DCs, and I'm not sure if it was Google, but I can't remember who made this statement. But they were saying that, like, as part of, before any deployment, they upgrade the EFI ROM, they upgrade the firmware of the Ethernet adapter, and none of their stuff's affected because they responsibly patched their shit before they put it in the DC.
Yeah, it's a crazy case. I think the thing that sticks out to me about it is the companies that came out against it, Amazon, Apple, etc., came out against the article in such a public way that I've never seen anything like it before. Like it was odd to me just how vehemently everybody denied it. And the tinfoil hat part of me kind of says, well, that's really strange. Why is that happening?
Yeah. Next story here. Interesting is Google is going to shut down Google Plus 4 months early after a second data leak. This is getting ridiculous. There was the developer API that people had access to, another developer API, and you could access private data. That was like private posts, which is not that interesting, but everything that's like Google Plus is tied to all of our Gmail accounts. So it's just like everything that's been shared within the context of like your Google Plus persona, which is like your, whatever picture and name is on there is attached to that. So I don't know what the actual full scope of that actually means, but I'm glad they're shutting it down.
Yeah, Google Plus is going to go Google Wave, Google Buzz, all the other things that I can't even remember the names of.
You know what's sad about it? Like, I kind of use it a little bit. I use it enough that it'll be yet again something else to figure out a replacement for.
Yeah. Like Google Hangouts and stuff like that was like cool, and stuff like that ended up being tied to like your full identity. It's just like, okay. It gets tied to your like phone search history. You're just like, if anything happens in the middle of it, things, it's like, I don't know. Someone gets to see how many times I have to Google what is my IP.
What do you think the next
super micro safe?
What do you guys think the next service is going to be that they do the same thing to? Because they've been shutting down a lot of stuff randomly, it seems like.
I don't know. I just want DuckDuckGo Plus.
Probably search, right? Like nobody uses that anymore.
Yeah, probably.
No, there's a bunch of services they have, like Google, like the personal homepage stuff, the blogger stuff. I feel like some of those platforms are probably used a bit by specific people, but in general, most, like, if you say to somebody, like, or somebody says to you, like, hey, where do I start a blog? You're like, I don't know, Medium, whatever, go there.
So do
you don't instantly think like, oh yeah, Blogger, that's owned by Google.
Oh yeah, that's right, they do. Do you guys think it's possible that Twitter has regained so much market cap that Google is shutting it down because they know they'll own Twitter after the purchase that they make that hasn't been announced?
It's a decent theory.
I mean, direct competitors, one product makes sense.
You can imagine Google just completely destroying Twitter by turning it into some horrible Google Plus.
God, yeah, it would be so bad.
They totally would.
Introducing Twitter Hangouts.
Yeah. Twitter Hangouts
integrated with Drive.
Twitter Drive, yeah.
It was supposed to be the
Drive.
competitor for Twitter. I think.
Twitter Wave.
One of the things with Twitter though as well is that it operates in a very specific manner that they've sort of stuck to. Even though they did things like increasing the character limit, and some other stuff, it's pretty known that you just make Twitter account make Twitter account from Tor. Okay, troll people. Like it's the whereas Google are the very opposite, where you need to attach a mobile phone to your account now and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
It's not that easy to open a Twitter account anymore, actually. They are pretty Nazi.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's becoming
You
like...
need a phone. It's pretty hard if you don't have a phone. So,
I think you can still... I'm not sure they block like Twilio numbers and stuff, but I think
they don't.
You can't reuse the Twilio numbers, so you need to get one that's not...
You can go... I used to be able to use them 5 times.
Yeah, but I think everybody's used them 5 times. So it's kind of it's last time I was screwing around with Twitter and Twilio, it was unsuccessful for a little while. Then it worked, and I was like,
yeah, you can use Google Voice though. It's still good
until they shut that down, right? Hey, Faith, did you mention this out loud? I didn't hear you, but Supermicro paid a law firm to do that audit. What?
Yeah, we kind of missed that in the story. Like, if you read the intro to that story, they said Supermicro had an audit of their motherboards done by Norello and Co. Well, who the fuck are they? I looked them up, and we're a law firm that specializes in asset recovery and litigation.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah, I thought maybe there was some kind of elite hacker unit I hadn't heard of that's qualified to like find nation state level backdoors in hardware, but I mean, whatever.
Man. That definitely adds yet another layer of what the F.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
Supermicro's lawyer team says there's no backdoors. Everyone just goes, oh, okay, no problem. They're lawyers; they know what they're doing. So,
one of the things about that actually that's interesting is similar to the Huawei 5G argument that was had, where they basically said, no, we'll hand over all the plans and all the you can inspect the source and you can do this and you can do that, but what came into question was, if we go and inspect these devices, these boxes, is that actually what's we're going to get? Like, are you going to give us what you're showing us the spec to, or do we have to go and make sure that is what we're getting? Because it's
yes.
Don't just check.
And in our experience, the hardware did not match specification, so we said sorry. We ordered a Big Mac with no pickles, and there's pickles on this, so take it back.
Yeah.
And they're not happy about
it. So what was the next thing here?
Boys, the squad.
Yeah. So surprise, surprise, the leader of a Prophet squad gets 3 years in jail for so many bomb threats and pretending that a plane was hijacked and just some of the most just shit tier stuff I've ever heard. That's what happens. Literally, if you taunt the feds and you are 19 and live with your parents, they are coming to your house.
They were such idiots too. They connected the IRC server directly from their cable modem.
Yeah.
So, like, just idiocy.
I thought the other thing that was funny as well was the type of quote DDoS was complete HTTP requests. Like,
that's
slow
true.
Talking. Yeah, there was no slow talking. There was no like TCP magic or anything. It was just like make a lot of GET requests.
Yeah.
No chunked encoding, no large headers, no anything.
No. Just curl.
Nice.
The curl for loop. That's good.
The oldest hacker tool.
Well, we tried our best. We tried our best with that kid. You didn't listen, so
yeah.
Right.
But the whole story though, because I mean I don't know, we've seen these kids for a while. But the story just of them DDoSing Proton Mail and then using Proton Mail to talk about DDoSing other sites. Incredible. Incredible. Like, especially because they clearly weren't taking the proper precautions. If you're doing this stuff, get a VPN. You can set up an open VPN for free.
Or at least get on a VPN not owned by the company you're attacking.
Go to fucking Starbucks.
Yeah.
It's
basically
amazing.
anything.
I usually don't like to even critique people's OPSEC when they get busted and stuff, because in the end, when it's all presented, it's obviously going to look really bad because they have all the dots and all the dots connected, right? But in this case, Jesus, no, come on, take any precautions whatsoever.
I think a really big tell with a lot of these, I get, let's say, age is definitely a factor when it comes to a lot of this. People who are DDoSing, a lot of people who are carding, swatting. Like, there's a few different categories that we sort of consider. I guess like you were saying, shit here. And like bomb threats against 1,700 schools and universities.
That's
Bomb
just
threats.
crazy.
That's not like, that's not hacking. That's just calling up someone on the phone and being like, hey, lol, there's a bomb. Like, that's not very responsible, cool, or skillful. There's nothing masterful about it.
It's like, it's basically like being a pyromaniac or something, just burning something down.
Well, I totally hacked your house. They burned it down. Like, shit, DDoS protection, bro. Remember that?
There are, but this guy was 19, right? So it's not like he's, well, I mean, you can still say he's a kid, maturity-wise, still a teenager. But you're right. It definitely seems to be an age-bound thing where the like fighting and bravado and sort of chest thumping stuff that you see with DDoS and swatting, and that happens in the schoolyard, and it continues online.
Yeah. I think
this is something else. I don't know.
It is something else, because that number, 1,700. Jesus Christ! How many a day did he have to do to reach that number?
Yeah.
Who is he impressing? Like, has he got some cheer squad going? That's amazing. You should call him more bomb threats. You're the best.
I think ethos. Like, I don't really like that term, ethos. Like, I find, but that's what I guess in the scenes that I've seen, it's very much trying to how many girls can we get in our chat room, and will they cyber and stuff, right? Like, let's do bomb threats to impress them, and other, again, schoolyard type stuff that just is not. Please stop it.
I'm turned on right now.
Something to point out also, if it was just DDoS and some of the other things without the bomb threats, there's a good chance that years down the road, companies are going to be interested, or at least some companies are going to be interested in consulting work or whatever, because you technically were a hacker or whatever. But when you start adding stuff like bomb threats, it changes
like plane hijacking.
Yeah, it changes the dynamic of your crime to where now not even shady consulting companies want to talk to you.
Yeah,
but it's
like, we don't want the literal terrorist.
Yeah,
it's a tell of your morality as well, because sometimes, for example, carders can justify that they're stealing money from the bank. Sometimes, the money's insured. They use different ways to justify what they're doing with their moral compass. When it comes to calling in a bomb threat, when it comes to calling in a hijacked plane, you definitely are just out there be a dick.
That's just baby terrorism. Baby terrorism, really. It's like
chaotic evil.
Right. I agree. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids think they're, the Joker from the Batman movie or whatever. They're here to bring chaos to the world. A little Professor Chaos from South Park.
Well, it is like a lot of power in that sense, right? When you could stop, websites from being up and stop, planes from flying around, and
stop that.
Wow.
And a lot
people
of
who know they're going to go to jail, they want to put on a show,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to have a story to tell when they're in prison. They assume they're going to be there, so might as well go out with a bang.
Also, we're still getting DDoSed in 3 years.
Yeah, you know,
No,
actually,
we're getting DDoSed already. Is he on call, by the way? Is that maybe why we're getting DDoSed?
No, so like we were getting DDoS last week, I think, and I just transferred the DNS to Cloudflare and pointed the website at, like, it was previously static HTML on Apache, so we were suffering absolutely zero.
Yeah.
And we moved across to Cloudflare and S3, so
It was
have added.
It was
Go
the
for
most lame DDoS too. 46 megabits. That's enough apparently for our provider to null route. But Jesus, 46 megabits is you can send that with your cable modem.
That's one box could DDoS you, like one other server on the internet.
Right.
Any
Like
other-
Lord,
any other server.
So speaking of DDoS, so you guys see this thing? The same day that happened, we were talking about CoAP. I'd never heard of this before, and I don't think anybody else had either. Scalesec hadn't heard of it, which is what tipped me off that no one's heard of it. CoAP, though, it's like a UDP protocol devices can use, and you send a tiny little packet, tiny little UDP packet, and it sends back a ton of data, similar to like Memcache or anything like that, DNS reflection, any kind of thing.
Other stuff.
Somebody mentioned MQTT was part of this too. Is that what CoAP is?
I don't think so.
MQTT is something that sits on top of it. Like usually Rabbit is used as a MQTT server. Also Mosquito is another name for it. But I don't think specifically, like, because it's a message queued service, it's not. It'll ensure delivery. So if MQTT is handling CoAP, it'll just ensure that the CoAP packet's delivered and then later amplified, which is pretty.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I saw an article with them mixed together in it, and I couldn't understand the link. That's cool though. I find these things fascinating. Like, do it up. Find some new ways to DDoS stuff. It's interesting.
Remember, Errata Rob did when he was working on Mass Scanner, UDP stuff. He wrote a couple of articles about how he was getting random amplification coming in over UDP, just sending garbage to random hosts on random ports. Or null payloads, just a header, UDP datagram, and he'd start getting packets coming back from other networks and stuff. And he tried again, and it happened again, and he just kind of mentioned it in passing because I think some of those networks were government or infrastructure or something.
Was that tied?
But I wonder, did you see anything like that in your adventures, Dan, in UDP scanning? Did you see weird?
Yeah,
have to be looking for it, I suppose.
I can't remember which IP protocol it was, but the one little Perl kind of IP fuzzer that I have, yeah, it would do some wacky things, especially with IPv6 and encapsulation protocols. So there's a way more stuff out there that hasn't been discovered.
Like if you just blasted a payload with the character 1 or 0 in a UDP datagram across entire IPv4 space, I guarantee some things would be responding to that and probably sending you traffic back going, yes, I'm okay, I'm alive. Here's my serial number.
That's actually what part of the 3G backhaul bush thing, those routers that I hacked ages ago, there was that's what it was. It was a random UDP port listening for a specific Python pickled, and when you sent it data, it responded, and that was, unfortunately because of pickle and other things, the problem was actually RCE, not just some reflected thing.
Oh wow!
But technically, if it didn't have RCE, if it was just responding with the type of data that it should expect, so there's the default operation is ping. So if you sent it an incorrect payload, it would give you the ping result, which was so an incorrect payload is opening the UDP socket and then closing. Well, sorry, not opening UDP, so sending anything to the UDP socket, and then it would respond with the ping. So technically, like that. Yeah, just thinking about that right now, like that would work in that sense.
That's really cool. Yeah, these things are fun. When did Rob do that, by the way, Faith?
Uh, I can't remember the name of the article exactly, but it was like fun with null payloads, UDP null payloads.
I wouldn't
I
mind
can
doing
find
that.
it.
I think that would be really fun. Like, yeah, I've kind of wanted to always explore it, but it's a matter of time and like prioritizing stuff, right?
Hey,
And also finding a host that will actually allow you to do this for more than a couple minutes at a time.
Ooh, I have a host now. Yay!
Yay.
Yo, so speaking of, I forgot what my little transition was. Speaking of you, I guess, Dan, we have like a couple of, what's it called? Only a few minutes left before we do our main talk. We should get into the two important stories of the day. One is the Australian bill, but I wanted to go over what you found today into Joseph Cox heard about it.
Yeah, it's just it wasn't so a lot of times the things that end up blowing up on Twitter are things that I have no previous indication or thought that it's going to get big or noticed, and this was one of them again. Um, there was a conversation that Kevin Beaumont was having about Equifax, and it reminded me that back when the Equifax breach happened,
Mm-hmm.
I had looked around to see are the other three or are the top three in the US, are they all using struts or not? And the answer is yes. Like Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are all three using struts. And that's kind of really just the meat of it is just I was pointing out, by the way, guys, in case you forgot, Experian is still using struts. And so is TransUnion, and that actually turned into something even bigger after people, as they do, kind of start digging in on it. There were open directories found, there were manuals found, and these manuals had actual customer data in them, and it just turned into the same old story that we just keep seeing over and over again, which is people doing a really terrible job securing their infrastructure and not really caring too much that they're not doing a good job because there's no repercussions. And I think that's most clear by what happened with Equifax. Um, I I don't recall if they were even fined, but there was certainly no financial impact to them. I'm pretty sure they turned a profit that year.
The CEO resigned, and maybe someone else internationally took
Yeah, but
fell on their sword, but
they probably had golden
financially,
handcuffs or golden parachute, so they probably got paid when they left.
In this topic, it's always worth asking, what company has been close to going out of business because of a breach?
Zero that I know of. Not even Hacking Team, right? Like Hacking Team was an example that I think is wow, if any company was going to close, it would be a team that was designed to hack. Literally a hacking team that gets hacked. That would be the one
team.
It's game over. They didn't
Ashley
even
Madison.
They didn't even change the name. It's still Hacking Team.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the whole hacking team thing, because I had a discussion about this recently. The fact that you're right, they didn't change their name, they didn't have a repercussion beyond, maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe they don't work for a single government agency or government anymore. But it's almost also the market's fault, right? Like the fact that people are still freaking hiring them. Like I thought they would. I thought they did go out of business. I go back and look it up, and no, they still have government contracts across the board, not just with U.S. governments and other governments too. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like what? So let's all just throw our data around. There's no recourse anymore.
It's too bad because there's a certain amount of people that are jaded, especially people that have been in the industry long term, especially on the blue side. There's a certain amount of just a point where you get jaded to everything, or at least you get a little negative about things. And it like seeing stuff like this continue to happen over and over again doesn't help at all. It just doesn't. But yeah, no, at the end of the day, I have nothing to no evidence that Experian or TransUnion's been owned, other than the fact that they're using struts. And in my mind, when you're using struts, there's a pretty good chance that somebody's been inside at some point.
I think just the some of the screenshots that were shown on Twitter that other people had found of open directories with source zipped and stuff like that. That's a pretty good indicator that it's probably not to be trusted. But
Yeah, I wonder who does that penetration testing. They must use Norello and Co. The same guys as Supermicro.
Oh, one of the guys that was doing a really good job, and man, I wish I had his to give him a proper shout out. But he was finding burp save files in the freaking directories. Nice. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
That's a good sign.
The burp was writing to that.
Do we?
Minimum was writing to that.
We want to spend 5 minutes talking about this Australian bullshit.
It's I thought it was a good thing for everybody.
Yo, hold on.
Did you have enough drinks?
PT2 Networks, by the way, that was the guy. That was the person who found it. He found like a remote code execution, like vectors, like some save. It's like endless.
He was cleared up. He did a fucking amazing job. Everybody should follow him.
Hell yeah. All right. So we want to do your rant about Australia now?
Very quickly.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
What the fuck, man?
So, basically, the premise of this bill is that it was rushed through before Christmas, just in case there was a terror attack over Christmas, that they could say that it was through, and there was very little opposition from the independents or the opposition to the government at all. And everybody sort of shook hands and agreed and said, yep, terrorists are bad, push a bill through. What you're reading in the news probably is mostly bullshit. Practicality of it is just through the floor. No, it's not a bill that says everybody in Australia is not allowed to use encrypted messages. That's bullshit. Basically, what it's trying to achieve is that individuals can be targeted as part of whatever, and through like AB groups and other ways of pushing out things, they can the government should be able to push out methods to break end-to-end encryption. So there's some specific stuff in there about carriage operators and not introducing systemic weaknesses into the network. So that basically means you can't downgrade the encryption on 4G or 5G or whatever. Like that's where they're going with that. That's the intent. But you can target specific people, and you can make requests to telcos and other software vendors that ship encryption to introduce specific flaws for specific use cases. So not a blanket version of Signal that goes out to everyone in Australia, or Telegram, or like can you imagine if they said, hey, Telegram, can you give us a backdoored version and sign it and put it on the App Store just in Australia and just serve it to these people? Like Telegram would tell them to, get fucked. And with iMessage, that's probably what Apple's going to do, and that's probably what now not complying. So the other thing to comply with is if in there is that it's possible for a government department with this authority, which I'll get to who that is in a sec, to compel not just the company, but specific employees at the company to introduce the backdoor and not tell their employer with the threat of jail time on top. So if you don't comply with the government, the company can get a $10 million fine, or an individual, I believe it's an individual related, can face jail time. I need that's I'm not 100% sure on the exact, because one of the thing about this is that it's hazy. It's not written in a very straightforward term because it was rushed through. The amendments are planned for February, but there's no guarantee. Like, no one really says like they're like, we're going to talk about amendments in February, but the bill's already gone through, so everything from that point is backpedaling, which we all know means that it may or may not happen. We'll see, but only time can tell. So that's basically the gist. So a lot of a lot of tech companies in Australia are really worried. A lot of people who work in IT are really worried. I don't really think those people should be as concerned as they are, just because practicality and having someone do something for you for the government's sake is very low. I think though where the problem with this all lies is that there's more to it than that. That's what you'll see in the headlines or whatever. The thing with it is there's things about entering premises. There's things about certain warrant scenarios. There's also certain statements in there about like who has this authority. Like, it's not just the idea is it's not just the intel agencies who probably have the capabilities technically to do certain like targeting single people. They already do that for anti-terror or whatever. And also they have the ability to sign off and go, hang on a minute, we need to get a certain warrant, judge to sign off on this, get this done. Yep, intercept on this person, done, good stuff. The authority is given out to a bunch of lesser departments. And if we look at the metadata retention laws and how they were used, they're abused pretty heavily. So the abuse potential for this is high due to one of the lack of accountability and recourse that there is. So if you find that you're backdoored, like if you were to say, for example, open your phone and your Signal hash doesn't match, the only recourse that you actually have is to reinstall Signal. That's all you got. You can't really, you're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to do anything about it. And if the government gets it wrong and they start backdooring the wrong person, then that's too bad. That's basically, well, suck it up. We're trying to catch terrorists. There's a really strong narrative of the terrorist push here, but I think it's very like ill thought out. And yeah, like it's the problems I see with it are more around responsibility, accountability, and the authority that's given out to. I think the stuff that you read about anti-encryption is just absolutely like probably not going to happen. That intel agencies and stuff already possess, that they already do. Like that's where it's crazy. So it's fucked because it's vague, and I know that there's certain vendors who work in Australia who ship encryption software. They work on sensitive things, and I think those people are worried. And I think we'll see some lawyer battles where basically the people who have the money, like Apple, like Amazon, like Google, will just be like, no, get fucked. Like, we're not paying you $10 million fine. That's stupid. But in the case where they require, in the cases where they would normally help the government through a warrant or whatever, I think it'll just go through as normal because that's what already happens. So
yeah,
if the amendments are to be made, I think I'm not sure that there's ever a going back scenario from this, or a real solved solution that this can come to. The rights are taken away and blah blah blah, all that, they're gone. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out if amendments are made in February, and some other stuff. But I think what it's really done is, if you're a foreign company and you know about this and you operate within Australia, and you ship encryption software, then it's likely that you would potentially not want your employees to be in Australia. So it's a potential negative impact on security companies, like security as an export industry. Whereas the local companies, everybody's going to be under the same sort of umbrella, and it won't really affect people like small companies operating within Australia. If you work at as a dev, I don't really think you should waste your breath whinging that but the government this, but the government that, and I don't think that you're ever going to get contacted to introduce a backdoor into your startup software.
So I mean, like
See how
you
it pans
being
out.
there,
But yeah, the TLDR is that it's the reach, accountability, and authority given that is the most messed up parts. Not really the fact that they're saying that they're going to try and look how blocking Telegram turned out for Russia.
yeah. I mean, you being a resident and kind of having a better feel for
Dan, you're letting
politics.
up, but I can't hear.
Okay. Hang
Oh, I hear you now.
on. Oh. So you being there and having kind of a better feel of the pulse of politics and climate and all that, what do you see happening? Do you see it getting struck down? Do you see it getting significantly amended, or do you see it actually going through as is?
It's already through as is. It's past what's called royal assent, where the governor general signs off. Because Parliament's now closed until February, there's not going to be any changes. It's in as is. There is, for any Australians who are concerned, there is a repo that I should probably link in the chat that has a whole bunch of FAQ stuff that's going through, trying to get some questions answered for people who are concerned.
So I might be a little ignorant on just how government works in Australia, obviously, but I thought it had to go through the Senate or something.
Oh, it's through. It's done.
Oh, I thought it was only in the House.
This is a real thing now, and what it's like. So the final step after it goes through the Senate is the royal assent, where the governor general signs off.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really quick that they did that then. That's insane. That's totally nuts.
So one of the things is that the opposition leader, Mr. Bill Shorten, he basically the gist is that if a terrorist attack had have happened and he opposed this bill over the time Parliament was closed, he would look like a real fucking jackass. So with all his courage, he
looks like a jackass now.
Well,
yeah, right. Exactly.
Could I pivot off that thing you just said? The fact that this has been rushed through so quickly, when everybody's basically peacing out for the holidays, and both sides have said, yeah, obviously not everything in this bill is going to be accepted. We're gonna reconvene in February and have another look at this. It makes me feel as though it was rushed through to address a specific threat, and that it isn't targeted at iMessage and Telegram, and it may be targeted at one of those things like Wicker or something. They might be going after one person, or they have an active threat that they've needed to rush this through. I'm hoping that's what it is.
I think it's a really good observation because what you said.
And we tend to have these kind of things happen over Christmas and New Year's because people that do these sort of things don't like Christianity, so they attack at Christmas, right? It's a pretty long history of that in the Western world.
So some
definitely, and one of the things
market is going down.
One of the things I was a little bit is that everybody back after the week after DEF CON was the show that we first talked about this, and I brought up some of the stuff about entering properties without warrants, blah 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 stuff back then. I was like, this is crazy. This will never go. And a lot of people basically spent their breath making jokes about. So there was a comment from the at the time Prime Minister, which was the laws of mathematics are not as important as the laws of Australia, and that everybody was busy making jokes about that, not actually going, hang on a minute, maybe we should probably say that the bill's fucked in other ways rather than just its practicality of end-to-end messaging. So.
Well, you guys are definitely giving us a run for our money in the government politics idiocy.
The best thing we can hope for with the amendments is that so if they keep in all the stuff about the end-to-end encryption, whatever, I really don't think it's that big of a deal, and I don't think the government compelling certain departments to do certain things either is that big of a deal. I think that the amendments are likely to clean up a little bit. Well, should the amendments happen, I guess they could just put them on the table and they say, nah, fuck it, and leave it. But if the amendments do go through as what we would hope, and the correct authority and responsibility is given out to go along with those, it's not going to be that big a deal. But yeah, like again, authority, responsibility, accountability, they're the thing. They're the real problems with it, in my opinion. Not the fact that breaking end-to-end encryption is difficult and impractical at scale. So
TBD, right?
Hold on one second, guys. I just crashed Discord.
Oh my god! No.
But I just sent I commit felonies like so many emojis, and then I can't close Discord or do anything. It's completely broken. Hold on.
That we have a working Discord crash?
Oh yeah. Hold on. Let me.
Nice.
Hold on. I'll 1 second.
We skipped over one story. What was the story that we skipped
Well,
over?
it's 10:30 now. We should talk to. Hold on.
Well, but your thing's crashed, so we can talk about something else for a minute.
Well, TProphet is here too. It's 10:38 though. I'm just saying.
Fair enough.
Hold on. I'm like trying to like make sure my connection's still alive. I can't do anything at all. Hold on. Actually, TProphet, hi.
Yo.
Hi. We should start talking here. I just got freaked out when I think everything was trying to go on buggy. But you can still hear me though.
There's something you guys should play.
Oh yeah. Wait, do you want to play? Well, how were you playing it before?
I was just playing it on my my computer here. I don't think I can do that while I'm holding down Control P though.
1 second.
Let me see if I can figure that out. Hold on.
Everything just broke. Yeah, my Discord client is just all gray.
If I had the link, I'd play it. I don't know where the link is though. Which channel was it in?
In Pet Zone.
Oh, okay, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. The boat horn has been played. Welcome, TProphet, to ThugCrowd.
Yeah, so the boat horn, like I know we had a bit of a false start there. It was really famous with the tele-challenge this year because we were robocalling people with it.
Oh yeah, and just so to kind of introduce that's the tele-challenge from DEF CON. And
that's right. We run kind of like a telephone CTF at DEF CON every year.
Right, that's awesome. And as far as I know, it's the only. I think we talked about this. It's the only Phreaking CTF that exists, right?
As far as we know, yeah.
Yeah, so that's badass. Yeah, you guys consistently put together great CTFs. This year was no exception. I don't know how many people on the stream got a chance to participate. I know participation was lower, I think, than expected because I think a lot of people were either not realizing what was going on with it, and I think the other really big thing is, generationally speaking, there's a decent amount of us in here that are old enough to remember things like telephones, but yeah, generationally, Phreaking has kind of gone out of style, for lack of a better term, and kind of gone to the wayside. And I know for you, you and I, all three of us are pretty interested in Phreaking, and I'm obviously leaving out others in the channel that are as well too. But if you could, one thing I think would be interesting for people that aren't really familiar with you or your work. Can you kind of give us a rundown of what, how you came up and your time with 2600 and all that?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm TProphet. I write for 2600, the Hacker Quarterly, which is the largest technology magazine on Kindle, actually, and we still publish in print as well. You can pick us up at Barnes & Noble and other fine magazine retailers, what few still exist. And I write a column called The Telecom Informer, but I've been writing since 1990, so I'm actually kind of old. And I pretty much exclusively write about phone stuff. I do other stuff too. I've got a travel blog called Seat31B. That's SEAT31B.com. And I'm pretty active on Twitter and do some stuff in the information security community as well, such as founding QueerCon, which is the largest LGBTQ organization in InfoSec.
Hell yeah, and that's just QueerCon alone is always badass.
I have nothing to do with it anymore. It's I show up, they give me an emeritus badge and say, please just enjoy the con and don't work. I'm pretty good at founding stuff and getting it off the ground. And when it comes to the scaling part, there's a couple of folks who are really good at that. Jason Painter particularly, and they've just pretty much turned QueerCon into a con within a con. But when it comes to phone stuff, so I'd been doing a bunch of stuff at DEF CON, right? Like I started QueerCon, got it off the ground, two other co-founders helped a lot with it as well. That's Aaron T. Brink and Jonathan Nelson. And so the three of us were kind of a, dynamic trio, running QueerCon. And I moved to China, and it got really hard to do one of the biggest parties at DEF CON and try to put it all together, with two other people when I was time zone shifted and shifted an entire day. And so at that point, we had Jason come in and kind of take over. And I was looking for something to do because, when you run really big stuff at DEF CON, it's just, all of a sudden you go and it's that year where you don't have anything. And it's like, what? This doesn't make any sense. I'm not really working hard. So that's where the tele-challenge came from.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine it's like a full-time job essentially when you're running something that big and elaborate at DEF CON. I can't imagine there's a lot of time to have a ton of fun other than actually putting on the thing. So as far as the challenge goes, you kind of alluded to it at the beginning, but you guys were doing some really crazy, awesome stuff, including robocalling people. And the CTF, for those of you that can remember DEF CON and remember those days, you might have seen posters around for a travel company, and I forget if it had a boat on the actual poster or not, but I know.
Yeah, we totally did.
Yeah, I mean, you guys went all out as far as to host booths and stuff. So can you kind of take us through what was involved in it, what people are going to remember seeing, but then ultimately what amount of crazy effort went into actually building this? Because I cannot imagine it's anything other than mind-blowing.
Well, it was less effort than goes into QueerCon, to be totally clear. Those guys, just do so much work, and people give me way more credit than I deserve for QueerCon. without people showing up and doing most of the work, like that never would have been a thing. It's just, and that's what is really awesome about starting something new is if people are into what you're doing, a lot of the time they just show up and ask, how can I help? And they just really want to be a part of it. And so, that's kind of happened with the telechallenge. So I had this idea, 3 years ago, I guess. Yeah, it was the third telechallenge last time. So we're going into the fourth. And, again, I was getting kind of bored with DEF CON. Like, I'd stopped running QueerCon and was looking for something to do. So I got together with a friend of mine named Avi Friedman. And he's an old school, like, BBS sysop. And, I was too. And so we kind of got this idea that wouldn't it be fun if we did something BBS related? And so I got a bunch of floppy disks, like actual 3.5-inch floppy disks, and made like an old Wares floppy, like you'd get it at a 2600 meeting. And it, I actually ran a BBS back in the day. Like the Dark Tangent and I both had boards in Seattle, and we even traded Wares. So like I had some stuff from his BBS on the, like, there was like a BBS listing with the Dark Tangent system in it. And, so basically
I remember seeing this. So wait a minute, but some of that stuff that was on those floppies was from the original back in the day?
Yeah, straight up. Like, so before DEF CON,
cool.
like DEF CON, DT was a BBS sysop, and he had a BBS in Seattle called a Dark Tangent system. And so, my BBS was called the Bin, and we were friends. So, like we both had these respectable like areas in the front with message bases and stuff. And then, like in the back door, there was all Wares. And, I had a ton of Wares and so did he. And like we trade Wares and like hacker stuff. And that's kind of, how I got to know about DEF CON because, he just invited all his friends down to Vegas and that became the first DEF CON. So yeah, like I went and dug through like all my storage and found an archive of like some of this old stuff, like these old, like old files from, back in the day, and made a bunch of BBSs. Like I made a bunch of floppy disks, kind of like you would get at a 2600 meeting. Because, back in the day, you'd go to a 2600 meeting and people would like hand out floppies, and sometimes they'd be full of viruses, like just to mess with you. And sometimes there'd be awesome stuff there too. Like, Mucho Mas and like Minor Threat would show up with, the latest build of ToneLoke sometimes at the 2600 meeting they went to. So the like the first year of the telechallenge, and I just really want to set the stage for where this came from, and we'll talk about like what we did last year. But I basically found people that looked like they were under 25, and it might be their first DEF CON. And I asked, "Are you under 25? And is this your first DEF CON?" And if the answer was yes to both, I just handed them a floppy disk. So
DEF CON 101, by the way, just to add that real quick, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I went to like DEF CON 101 and also to the merch line. So like DEF CON 101 was on Thursday and the merch line was on Friday. And so the thing is, like, I also made sure there were only 2 floppy drives in Las Vegas at Fry's because I was kind of a dick. I wanted to encourage people to like, share and talk to people kind of like we used to do, because like everything's, so competitive. There's not like a lot of collaboration anymore. And I even got my friend Tim in on it. Like, so he's one of the 2 people behind TourCon, and he was working with Unix Surplus at the vendor booth, and they had a ton of floppy disks, floppy drives as well. So anybody who came by with a floppy disk and asked to use a drive, they made sure there was one. So there were ways to read these things, and you had to figure out how to like decompress an ARJ archive in DOS. And read through and solve a puzzle. And where that puzzle would lead you is a social engineering challenge. You actually had to call me and social engineer me into giving you the number of the BBS. And so, if you needed like, basically some information from the puzzle to be able to social engineer me successfully. So like, if you didn't do a good job at it, like I'd say, screw you, Fed, and hang up on you.
Did you have people doing the whole? I just lost my BLT drive. Just went AWOL, and
the good old from hackers. That's funny.
Yeah, surprisingly, no. Like, people were really terrible social engineers. They're like, and that's the thing with like hackers now, because you don't actually have to do stuff over the phone. Like, we're all using Shodan and, like to probe stuff, and like we've all got Metasploit. If it's not on the internet, it might as well not exist as far as hackers are concerned. But there were a couple of teams that actually solved the puzzle and they figured it out. And like, you had to literally go to the Alexis Park, which hosted DEF CON for like years. And they know what hackers are and they don't like us. And you had to like figure out how to jack into a phone, like, which looks shady as hell there, being an obvious hacker during DEF CON. And, if you manage to do that and dial into like the BBS, which was in Rickson's room, and, like GoonCon was over there, by the way. So a whole bunch of really pissed off goons would like go after you if you tried a physical attack. Then you could like get in, and like the board was actually the bin. Like, it was an archive of the board. It was all just as I left it when I took it down, including like a bunch of old messages that were on the same Echo Mail network that DT and I shared. So you could, read all that, like all those old posts, and like download some old wares. So it was really like just wonderful to resurrect it. And, we had a couple of teams that actually won. And at the time, it was called the Telefreak Challenge, because I was working with Telefreak then. And the prize was an invite to the Telefreak party, which is the hardest thing to get into at DEF CON, pretty much. And we had a few people solve it. So that got me inspired. It's like, cool, if, we do an old school puzzle challenge, like using, older technology, like, and essentially it was like a CTF, right? It was just, there was a social engineering component and a puzzle component, and I really love puzzles. So, I got together with my friends Lacutus and Lion the next year, and we did the first Tele Challenge. And that one basically was, the first time that we did just like a completely phone-based CTF. So fast forwarding to last year, so one of the things about the Tele Challenge is, if you might remember that, you got a floppy disk, no context at all. You had to figure out that it was a game, right? And that's what we always do with the Tele Challenge. Like, it's we kind of do, it's a puzzle inside of a puzzle. So
it's not something that's widely advertised as, hey guys, check this out. We're going to be doing this thing. Here's exactly how you can get on track to participate. It's low key and you have to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some dude dressed in a sailor suit like blasts you with a boat horn out of a bullhorn and hands you a flyer for Red Sea cruises to Mogadishu.
Sounds legit.
That's kind of weird. I remember that, and I had no idea what that was about.
Oh wait, Pike, you got one?
No, I just saw the dude and just kind of went forward.
Yeah, same. I was saying the same thing, is that I didn't realize it was like, damn it, like I should have just done it.
So unanimously, everybody, even people at DEF CON, when I'd see them in the escalators walking by, they'd be like, hey, did you see that thing? What the fuck was that? Like, nobody really took the time to actually dig underneath the surface, including us, to realize that it's a game. It's an AR kind of game. So yeah, I like that component of it. I just think it probably cut into the participation a little bit for last year, especially for how awesome it ended up being.
Yeah, it totally did, because hackers aren't perceptive. They don't pay attention to anything that isn't completely obvious. Hackers don't hack anything that they can't hack with Metasploit, and they don't find anything that can't be found through Shodan. And so, what we proved by doing this, and that, I'll like bitterly rant a little more, but, I'll just kind of like walk you through the challenge and like how it worked. So we showed up on Thursday as Red Sea Cruises in character. We were wearing, like, we acted like a street team. And I learned how to do this because one of the companies I founded is Cuddly, a dating app for geeks. So we basically like learned doing that, like how to promote something, like out in the real world. And what you do is like make a lot of noise and hand people flyers and like put your brand in their hand is basically what we say. So you'd get a cruise flyer. It was professionally designed by Pinguino, by the way. And, you know, basically, like, if you looked at it, it was like just a little off because it totally looked like a cruise company. Like, we showed up looking like a cruise company doing a promotion in Vegas. But, you know, the flyer was like a little weird. Like, there's no website. You know, who doesn't have a website these days? There was just a phone number on it. And the cruises were things like the, you know, like morning in Yemen tour, and like, who wants to go enjoy a morning in Yemen? You know, it's basically none of what was on there added up. And if you just peeled the onion a little bit, you would figure out that maybe there's more to this. So if you called that phone number, you'd get blasted with the boat horn, and we put you on hold, and it sounded like you were calling a cruise company and you were on hold. But all of the like the announcements, because we had these like interstitial announcements, right? Those were weird too. And then, you know, we were dropping clues, like we spelled the name of somebody in a voicemail, and eventually, like, if you could figure out how to dial 0, you could get into our voicemail system. You want to know how many hackers figured that out?
I'm afraid to ask.
Less than 10% of hackers who dialed into the system were able to figure out even how to hack the first voicemail challenge, which had a really tough passcode. Do you want to guess what that is?
It had to be 10 digits long, right?
Try 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, that's yikes. We need
So
to
it's fairly awesome, actually. So, like, you know, this is a piece of, you know, something I've actually thought of doing a paper on and, you know, presenting like as a serious piece of security research. You can put a system that you want to keep secure behind a phone, and 90% of the smartest hackers in the world, and that's who shows up at DEF CON, won't be able to get through even a passcode of 1, 2, 3, 4 if you make them sit on hold for a minute.
That's yeah, and so
Yeah,
the
I
question
definitely
becomes:
agree.
is it a product of the explosive growth that DEF CON's seen and the noobs that are there? And there are a lot of them. There's tons and tons of them. Or is it a product of a dilution of talent in a way? And I hate to put it like that, but in a way, there's not that sixth sense in a lot of people to go after things in a certain way. Is it a mindset thing? What's your take on it?
It is totally a diminution of talent, and what that means is that, you know, it's become very formulaic how people do hacking. Like, we used to dial into systems. Like, when I started Phreaking back in middle school, like, you know, I'd call phones and not know what was going to be on the other end, and you would just dial for the sake of trying to find something and see what, you know, was out there in the world that was like way cooler than, you know, you being 11 years old. And, you know, I started like, I actually started Phreaking when I was like old enough to learn how to call, you know, other places and run up a giant long distance bill, which, you know, pissed my mom off. But what are you going to do to a 7-year-old who, like, you know, runs up a couple of $100 bill, right? You know, basically, I don't think that I think the way that people do hacking now is they don't look at systems other than what's on a computer and the internet. It's really rare to meet anybody who does that. And people don't jump on systems and just try to figure out how they work anymore. You know, they're looking for a manual or a guide or like a Metasploit to do things. And so I hope I'm proven wrong, right? Like, we may not have reached enough people at DEF CON. There is talent there. Like, they're pretty smart people. I just think that they're not really smart at this anymore because it's kind of a lost art. And that's the whole point of doing the telechallenge is, you know, if we actually put a really fun puzzle there, it might get people interested in doing it again.
Yeah, and your comment of it being a lost art, I think, is definitely extremely true, and that's some of the reason that we put these two shows together. Is we wanted to focus on Phreaking because it's kind of near and dear to our hearts, and there's really I see very little to zero interest in it. the reason I see a little bit of interest in it is because I follow people like you and Lucky and a few others that are prominently into this kind of thing. But especially with the new crowd coming up, the idea of even making voice calls is foreign, yet let alone trying to break somebody's voicemail password.
Yeah, I
Really,
remember that
really easy.
telling me that she had to explain to one of her coworkers yesterday how to dial letters on a number pad. They were like a teenager, but still they're like pretty young, and they the fact that they just that even if you open up the dial pad, you see that. So that means they just never do that. You know, most
so
people
bizarre.
have a really strong aversion to answering phone calls or making phone calls. So
Can you imagine going through life seeing those letters on a number pad and just never knowing what they are, but never questioning it either?
Yeah.
That was me the first 15 years of my life.
But
Well,
with all
okay.
that though, you were saying Lost Art. We were talking about this when we had our initial conversation, for you coming onto the show, TProphet, about just like the level of patience. I think is a really big thing. You see that a lot with like people who just mass scan the internet all the time, and the brute forcers that just try to do like SSH brute force with the common top 10 passwords and then move on. And the fact that a lot of stuff is very automated and very black box, like tools themselves, even if they're open source, are still treated almost like a black box thing because people just let's say, oh, just run the OSCP guide on how to do an Nmap scan, so without ever opening up like an NSE script or something. Same thing goes with things like phone phreaking, where a long time ago people had to actually start doing like hand scanning and listen to very, very, very small aberrations between different tones and saying, oh, that's a reorder, that's a whatever, like just being able to understand what those tones actually mean and being able to use that to be able to very patiently and methodically understand very intricate systems that have zero guides on how to actually use them. And so,
well, if you come to see 18-year-old me in my apartment in Oregon, you would have heard a modem war dialing on one phone line, and you would have seen me like sitting in a room, like hand scanning on another phone while I was kind of listening to what the war dialing was turning up. And yeah, I mean, that's, I was kind of just intrinsically motivated to see what was out there. And, in greater Portland, I, in fact, moved to Portland in part because it had such a giant local calling area. Like they had this EAS area, and you could call so many things there. It was just like, and it was all free. It was like amazing. So, it's hard to say like how much interest we'll be able to get. Like we just want to do a fun puzzle, and that's like, so I'm kind of razzing people a little bit there. I hope that by saying DEF CON isn't good enough for our challenge, that might motivate some people to like prove that they are good enough. But last year they weren't good enough. Nobody solved it. It wasn't impossible to solve. We're actually going to post a walkthrough on how to do it. Like, if that's the best that the world has when it comes to phones, then really what we should be doing is putting our most secure systems behind a phone with the passcode and we'll be totally fine. Like nothing will ever hack.
Make sure it's a copper connection that you can only dial from a landline, and it will never get touched by anybody.
Yeah, totally. Well, one other thing that I think is kind of interesting is like, why is a phone always a second factor for something on a computer? Like a computer could be a second factor for something on a phone. So I think that might be interesting research as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, the interest in it, I think if people got exposed to it and started getting some wins, because it does take a while, and like you had alluded to, it takes patience, but I think once you pop your first few voicemail boxes or your first PBX, you really get hooked.
There is nothing like the rush of popping your first box, or whether it's a voicemail box or whether it's a computer. And yeah, like, so what we were able to see that some people actually did get it, right? they dial in, and you can watch this from the statistics. You can see this number dials in a couple of times and it falls off. This number dials in and dials in and dials in, and they're trying new things, and that's the right mindset, right? You dial into a system, you can tell that something's off, and then you just start trying to break into it. And we actually had a storyline. So if you bust a voicemail box in the telechallenge, at least the last couple of years, I'm not going to promise what we do next year. There's a storyline in that voicemail box, because the puzzle is all about piecing together clues and getting to the end, just like any capture the flag in that's happening at DEF CON. Like there's a puzzle and you've got to figure it out, and like at the end there's a flag. For us, if you got into the very first voicemail box, that would lead you to another one, and that would lead you to another one, and that would eventually lead you into a story where Red Sea Cruises had partnered with a company called Teleblaster, the world's largest robo-dialing platform. And, there was this big controversy at Red Sea because the platform was really effective, but it was also really ticking people off to be getting robocalled so much. And eventually the phone number of Teleblaster got dropped. And if you called that phone number, can you guess what happened?
I know what happened, but I'm going to let people sit in suspense for another few seconds before you say it.
Pretty awesome.
It's great.
Presumably it would call out.
That's right. We started robocalling people. We made dozens of robocalls. They were all professionally produced because one of my co-collaborators has a lot of radio experience, so they sound just like real radio ads. And they were for companies that we made up, like Colonoscopy Wizard and all sorts of like terrible stuff. Colonoscopy Wizard was the worst. We made like 3 ads for that, and we started it off with the Wizard of Oz theme. So we just wanted to ruin the Wizard of Oz for like everybody who ever played the game.
Oh, please, if you're able to find that before the end of the show, please just drop it in the voiceless voice and we'll play it to end the show.
Unfortunately, my co-collaborator is not available to provide the files. Like he was supposed to do it, and he got busy. So I'll have to do that as a bonus episode later, maybe. But yeah, we had all these robocalls, and so the thing is, like, as you started working your way through Teleblaster, we'd start robocalling you, and the farther that you got through Teleblaster, the more frequently we'd robocall you back. So like the game actually fought against you as you were playing it.
Did this is a quick sidebar, but did you guys, I'm assuming, record people's reactions for when they were getting these robocalls? And were a decent portion of them actually thinking that they're real robocalls and WTFing?
No, there was no. I mean, if you're getting a robocall for Colonoscopy Wizard, like, yeah, I mean, maybe that's plausible. But we had one for like a, Dan, the local drug dealer, like who could, deliver like 6 pounds of coke. We had another one for like
again in Vegas, not so crazy.
Yeah, not so crazy actually. Yeah, we had one for the shady lawyer that could get you out of jail after you got arrested for the 6 pounds of coke.
Funny, I love it.
There was the 6 pounds of coke theme. What else? Oh yeah, we had Maudie's bail and liquor. That's pretty good. They could bust you out and then bring you a 40, like as you were being let out of jail.
These are all great free ideas, by the way, for businesses. If anybody's looking to do a startup, and I'm sure VCs will throw money at you, but I digress. That sounds like awesome stuff. So it keeps escalating as you're getting these calls. You're getting more and more, and I'm assuming there's more and more hints being dropped during these calls, right?
Yeah, there's hints being dropped. There's like, we had rat holes for you to run down. So there was this whole like blaster panel thing that we built, and that whole thing was like just there to waste your time. And, one team spent like nearly all of their time like messing with the blaster panel, and like it literally like all it would do is like you could make it robocall you more often. So it just wasn't like so we might have to dial some of that back, because like it was pretty hard, but it was definitely solvable if you started on time. So there was a live action element to this as well, right? Because it is DEF CON and there's a lot of stuff that happens live. We had a booth in the contest area. So we showed up on Friday as Red Sea Cruises, and we had Mogadishu shuffleboard, and like, we were just basically messing with people. And you could register teams because, the intent was that it's a game that's designed to be played as a team. And then Saturday we showed up as Teleblaster. So I got to be, hey, I'm Sal from Teleblaster. We're hiring for Cyber and Black Hat. We pay more than blockchain. So, I did that.
You were dressed as an RSA participant then. That's the RSA pitch, right?
Possibly. No, we just showed up as Teleblaster. Like, we showed up as like a robo dialing platform. Like, people were like, and we just acted like we were recruiting.
Love it.
At that stage, like the only reason to come see us was to get game hints or tech support for the game. Like, if you hadn't started by Friday, it would be too late to start. But we got to mess with people all day. Like, we just acted like this awful robocalling company. And, I did the whole Sal act. We're hiring for Cyber. How big's your boat? I got a 42-foot bayliner by the shore. I hung out with Snooky last weekend. What did you do?
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
That's a level of dedication I'm not sure I've seen on any CTF, to be honest.
Well, it was super fun. It was really elaborate. We really just wish more people had played, but we plan to do an even bigger one next year. And if you start paying attention early, that might be an advantage.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna reiterate for people that are they have their antennas up and they're listening and they're kind of interested. To recap, going to DEF CON 101 may seem boring and lame, but it's actually probably a pretty good place to go next year if you want to maybe get some hints, and also some of the other various areas around DEF CON that you guys tend to hide and give secrets.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that I could say to take away from this, it's pay attention to stuff at DEF CON. And I know that it's like an assault on all your senses and it's really hard to like pay attention to everything, but there's a lot of really fun puzzles. It's not just us. And, if you have a short attention span and you don't look deeper, then it's likely that you're going to miss a lot. One other thing that I'll say is that kids have a superpower for this. So, we do make it a family-friendly game. There's, it's PG-13 is what we rate it at. So if you, have kids and bring them and they want to play, that's, totally okay. We definitely will mess with them, just like if they were actually Phreaking. But I started Phreaking when I was really, really young. And, this is something that should be accessible to, to people of all ages.
Yeah, agreed. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear I'm glad to hear both, that it's going to be written up. Last year's will be written up, and then also to hear that there's more evil awesomeness in store for us. And I can't wait to see you guys, what you guys end up coming up with. What in the meantime, what can people do to start, other than giving the advice, hey, just try and crack voicemail systems and stuff? That's generally kind of illegal to suggest people do. But other than suggesting things like that, what can people do? I mean, there's not really a lot of platforms out there for people to test on yet. I did find a few. Actually, my boss had on Binary Revolution, they're binrev.com. There's a lot of Phreaking advice stuff on there still, and there's some emulators like Project MF, and there's I think payphone emulator, so you can test Redbox tones. But other than stuff like that, you have any secret kind of things that I'm missing out on that are something useful that just don't get a lot of traction publicly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can drop a couple of hints if that's what you're aiming for, because that's just based on past games, right?
Well, hints for the game would be great, and I'm totally going to take you up on that offer. But I mean, in general, for people like in the audience that are interested in Phreaking, aside from me just saying, hey, everybody, what you should try doing is hitting *# when you hear a voicemail greeting and then crack the password, or dial as many phone numbers as you can in your local prefix. Aside from me saying those two things, which I didn't just say, what else can they actually do to start brushing up on their Phreaking skills?
Yeah, sure. So, here's what I can suggest. Like, I'll just take it at a really high level. If you're a hacker and you're just kind of interested in, like, how do I, even start with Phreaking? One thing to realize if you are a hacker is that your objective is to get data, information, access, and is more than one way to do that. You can go through the front door, you can go through the back door, you can climb through the window, you can convince somebody to open the frickin' lobby for you at 9 p.m. and let you walk right in, right? And there's just, so there's being what I would call, at the top of the hacker craft means that you need to be willing to actually embrace all of the elements of being able to get to your objective, whether that's, through systems or through telephone systems or through people or through just walking in with a clipboard, dressed in overalls, which is pretty effective too if you're, and this applies also if you're red teaming, but, if you're like totally black hat, it also applies because these are things that happen.
Hard hats are important.
What I've always found works really well for me is wearing glasses, because I wear glasses or contacts. If I'm wearing glasses, I have a shirt with the collar on it and a clipboard. Nobody ever stops me, no matter where I'm going.
It's brilliant. Yeah, I hear the clipboard thing from everybody that does physical pen. Clipboard is your badge in. It's as good as an actual badge.
Yeah, sometimes it's even better.
One thing that's pretty popular as well with, for example, pits and pillars. I don't know if you guys have pits and pillars, but where the copper lines converge in the street, is always the high vis vest, which is pretty cheap and you can get anywhere. Just don't wear it if you're in Paris right now. It's probably a best idea.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea in Paris. But yeah, so if you want a good visual, yeah, the reflective shirts that they're wearing in Paris, in a non-Paris situation, will give you a look of authority, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the movie Sneakers, like that's a really good example. I think that's probably the best hacker movie ever made, because it shows an example of like, how you get to an objective using all the hacker things, not just one of them. And we're too focused these days on like, banging down the front door with a battering ram, and it's an effective tool sometimes, but there are sometimes more effective tools. So how do you really get started with phones? Like the first thing to realize is just the sheer volume of stuff that you can do over a phone. And one way that I would suggest to prepare for it is just take the internet out of your life for a week and try to live your life only being able to do things over the phone. So, actually that's how we used to live, like, before the internet, like you had to call people. And if you do that, you're going to figure out, wait a minute, like I can do telephone banking, and wow, like I can actually call people and order things. And, there's just all these services that are available to you and systems that you'll gain exposure to that. And I'm totally not kidding. Like just shut off the internet for a week and like try to buy plane tickets over the phone, like try to refill a prescription over the phone, like just do all of the things over the phone and just learn how to do that. And once you've done that, you're going to get a way better appreciation for like the kinds of systems that you might be able to interact with and the things that you could do with them. So the next hint is a lot of these systems are older and they're not designed for cell phones. They were designed for landlines. And landlines, when you punch in the numbers, it actually basically will send the tone across the line for as long as you hold down the button. And so that's a very big difference versus a cell phone where it's all voice over internet. And basically like the tone is a very short one as you send it through. So that could be a really important thing to have available is a way to send long tones if you're breaking into a system. And I'll give you a great example, like Brad Carter, right? Like Red Box Chili Pepper.
Sorry, getting to my unmute button. Hell yeah, definitely. He's got that TNI. I was gonna actually just ask you about that. What did you? I think that's a probably really kick-ass resource to get started, right?
Yeah, totally. So like Brad has a collection of answering machines. And one of the things you're going to find out when you start trying to hack them is that if you can't hold down a key for a few seconds, you're not going to hack most of them, because that was actually like the way to get into a lot of answering machines back in the day. So that's basically like one really important skill. Another is that phones don't work very well over the internet. So if you're trying to do like voice over IP stuff at DEF CON, it just doesn't work very well. Like you need access to a real phone line.
That's what ended up making people actually have to go to the Riviera, if I recall, because all the phone lines these days are VoIP in some form, except for maybe I think the fax machines. But in general, there wasn't
So I was going to say, even the fax machines, there was a whole bunch of problems with T38 being compressed, and using lossy compression to like deliver faxes obviously wasn't working. So like all the core stuff is definitely not copper anymore. There's IP everywhere.
It might behoove you to get a room at the America's Best Value Inn.
Uh-oh. That sounds like... What was it called again?
That sounds like...
Yeah, there's just like there's sketchy motels in Vegas, and like if the older the phone system and the more cockroaches, usually the better.
Unless they've really cheaped out and they just have one cell modem that just handles everything.
So funny story, like back in
that might have been a hint.
So funny story, back in the hacker days.
Sorry, you tell story. My bad.
Oh, all right. So back in the hacker days in Portland, like I ran with a crew there, and we did some really, really fucking bad stuff that I don't want to talk about even now. And like I was 18 then, and I'm way older now. So, but we would rent a cheap motel room at like this sketchy motel in the worst part of town that would let people check in with no ID and pay cash. And we did that not to do the things most people do in those kinds of motels, but to use the phone to call stuff we really weren't supposed to be calling.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's smart.
So in the larger hotels, the internal PBX systems, like because a lot of those hotels are quite old, so I would imagine that the PBXs get neglected considering the type of handsets that are in the rooms.
Yeah, I mean, those PBXs, a lot of them were put in the 90s and they've never been changed. So one really funny thing that happened with the first year we did the tele-challenge, well, that was like the year I did it, and it was all mine. Except for the part that Avi did. So I guess I did have a collaborator that year. So that year DEF CON was at the Paris and Bally's, I think. And the phone system at the hotel had been, they put in this modem filter because too many people were calling AOL and tying up the phone lines. So if you got the number to the BBS and you tried to call into it, like you actually couldn't get through because the modem filter would kill you. So that's why you had to physically go to the Alexis Park. And, we didn't even plan that. Like I did, couldn't have anticipated it. So I had to dial back the complexity of the, of the challenge that year. Like it was actually going to be that you had to upload using Z modem and so forth. But We just made it so if you could get in and create an account at all, because it was just so hard to get over there and actually manage to connect from, locally from the AP, like being a hacker, like that's a really hard thing to get away with.
Yeah. The other thing, so from personal experience, I definitely participated in that one, and I was taking different approaches to try and get to the cheese. But I think some people are a little tied up and busy during the actual conference starting from Friday. And I know I waited until Sunday because I assumed I had Sunday until Monday. And I was obviously wrong. But is that something to anticipate for people that are planning on participating this year or this upcoming year? Is it going to be something that really kicks off Friday and you got to dedicate a decent amount of time until Saturday only? Or can you give us an idea about time frames and whether or not they'll be extended or flexible?
Yeah, I can give you some general structure with the game. So one thing that we're doing a little differently this year is we're going to make it fun to play even if you aren't going to be able to win. So you'll be able to start at pretty much any time and there will be things that you can do. But if you want to play to win, then this is just like any other CTF. You want to win any CTF, bring a team, work really hard, be as creative as possible, and plan to spend your entire DEF CON on it and stay up for 3 days if you can. And like, if you can drink enough energy drinks, right? So the first year that like 2 years ago when we did the telechallenge, the team that won got a black badge. And we designed the challenge, for that level. Like, it's a black badge competition that I can't guarantee it'll be a black badge, but we certainly make it hard enough that you should get a black badge if you won. And we hope that DEF CON will recognize that.
Oh yeah, that's great. Just shifting gears for a second, there's on the Twitch chat, we have a chat going. And there's a question, so as a 20, I'm just reading verbatim, so if they make me say the Fresh Prince, excuse that. But as a 2600 author, what topics would you recommend others write for consideration in 2600? Are there any topics with particular dearth of authors or contributions that you guys are frequently looking for?
So we're looking for anything and everything that hackers think is awesome and interesting. And so basically what I'd encourage you to do is, if you're interested in writing for 2600, we're interested in seeing what you're writing. Send it to articles@2600.com. That's articles@2600.com. And, you might see yourself published. And, like my first article I sent in when I was in high school in 1990, and they published it. And it doesn't matter how young or old you are. If you think that it's interesting to the hacker community, and if you've learned something, if you think it's interesting, go ahead and send it in. The only thing that we ask is that if you're going to be published in 2600, don't put it up on the internet, because, we want to be the first place that publishes your content.
Right. And if you want to keep it 0 day for like a month before you publish it, you can send it to Dan at ThugCrowd, and I'll have that, and that'll be great. I'm joking.
We gotta set up disclosures at ThugCrowd as well.
Yeah.
Our alias. But yeah. But no, this is awesome. I've as listening to you talk about this challenge, I'm excited to try it out next year, because this is the kind of thing that now I'm older and having had done a lot of things like this in the past and done stuff that I can never ever speak of. It's cool to be able to apply those kinds of skills elsewhere, because I don't really have an opportunity to. I don't have an opportunity to figure out which exact kind of PBX something is and listen to the error messages and understand in the similar way that you do with web penetration testing. Being able to have those sort of signatures that are in your head, and that kind of knowledge, a lot of people they still have it, but it's just been untapped because there's not really a use case for it. I don't have to, red box to call my friends or do other weird sketchy stuff to prove a point. So those kinds of things don't happen anymore. So it's good to have something like that where people can actually do that without just going directly to jail.
You know, that's a really good point, right? Like there used to be a real cost to making phone calls. You know, it was a couple of dollars a minute to call London, and you know, it was over a satellite, and you know, basically we weren't instantly connected to pretty much everybody in every corner of the globe like we are these days. And you know, now that there's like no real cost, there's no reason for Phreaking, right? And I put reason in quotes because if it doesn't actually save you any money, if you're not being able to do something that you couldn't do on the internet, why would anybody do it? And I think the answer is the quickest path to the flag is the one that gets you to the frickin' flag the quickest way. It is not necessarily a battering ram through the internet. It might be the phone system, right? Like you can wire money just as to Russia through a phone system as you can over a computer system, and usually it's a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't
So,
wait.
speaking of something that we did, just to go back to something that we covered in our first episode of the Phreaking stuff didn't go so well. That I wanted to ask you about while you're here is we brought up mention of SS7 and SS7 attacks that are most recent, but I believe your first article on SS7 was very early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably. Yeah, that sounds around right. And, you know, SS7 is exactly the same system with all the same vulnerabilities as it had then. The difference is, you know, all this stuff's hooked up to the internet now, and it was never intended to be, and it's more or less completely unauthenticated. That's why you get tons of robocalls, and I've actually written a lot on my Medium about the problem of robocalls and, you know, some potential solutions to it and why nobody is ever going to pay to fix this problem. So you can check out my Medium at medium.com/@TProphet.
So I guess like, you know, it's sort of just like that remnant tacked on, like things have been tacked on yeah, same things, same mess.
Same
Yeah.
fun.
Same fun. That's it.
Absolutely. Hey, but it's getting late now. We're a little over on our show time, but I really want to thank you, TProphet, for coming on and talking about stuff, because you have a lot of awesome stories and a lot of awesome insight into all this stuff. And I'm really hoping that more people who have listened are inspired by this and go look into some of the stuff that we're talking about, because there's a lot of old resources. If you look at Frack or 2600 or anything on text files, there's tons of stuff. Just looking at that and just seeing what people used to do, as well as just, you know, being bored one day and just war dialing on a toll-free number is a really fun way to spend an afternoon, honestly. That kind of stuff is definitely a lost art, but if you are somebody who can understand how to leverage phone stuff, then it just makes you more skilled in general. But I really thank you for coming on here, though. Been a big fan of your call since I was literally the first time I opened a 2600 when I was like 11. So, but with all this, I want to thank you. You can come on anytime, and anybody else is listening, if you have any sort of questions, how can they reach you? TProphet.
Well, super awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. Just, you know, one thing for people that are interested in practicing, I'm not committing to this, but there might be some content that we're posting on our Reddit. So you can go to telechallenge.org, and that redirects to our subreddit. And that's going to be kind of the primary, you know, discussion forum for the telechallenge this year. How you can reach me? Well, you know, the Reddit forum is a good place. That'll reach everybody around the telechallenge. If you want to reach me for other reasons, the absolute best way is on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is TProphet. That's Tango Papa Romeo Oscar Papa Hotel Echo Tango.
Awesome. And hey, just one other thing. Did you have anything that you wanted to plug? Any other kind of tangential things?
Yeah, sure. So I really love to travel. I've been to all 7 continents, and I write a travel blog at seat31b.com. That's SEAT31b.com. So yeah, go ahead and check it out if you're interested in travel at all. I write a lot about how to, travel for free and some of the crazy stuff that I do.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm not like super into travel myself, but I have read some of your stuff, and even I think at one point you had some kind of crazy flight from San Francisco to Russia or something like that for $100. It was ridiculous.
Actually, $137 from Vancouver to Australia. I'm heading down to Christmas Island of all places in September.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll be on next week for our last show of 2018, and we'll be doing our ThugCrowd holiday guide, where we are going to talk about all the weirdest IoT and sketchy data services that are going to be gifts this holiday season. So tune in for that. And if you have any weird stuff that you found, please tweet it at us, or you can join our Discord at elite.club. And thanks everybody for coming out. I think I had one more thing to say, but I forget what it was.
I know what it
Anybody
was.
have anything?
It was
What?
buy us Christmas presents and send them.
Oh, yeah. You could also send us any weird IoT or smart devices you want. The more butt plugs, the better. And the last thing I remember I was going to say was, speaking of DEF CON, if everybody, again, check out TProphet stuff next year, but we might be able to launch our own low orbit ion cannon into space around that time. So keep an eye on the sky. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming out, and we will see you next week.
Yo, shut up and get a lawyer.
Welcome to ThugCrowd Radio.
Yeah, I bet Flynn would like to go that route now.
Are we clear?